Good morning. Today is Sunday, the 28th of May, 2023. Yesterday, I got the main skins fitted and final size drilled for both wings, which means that today I'm going to start working on the leading edges and we'll just see how far we get. I'm not really too sure how time consuming a process that is. I'll save all the blah, blah, blah for the voiceover because that's what I do. Thanks for stopping in. I really do appreciate you coming by. If you want to give a like or subscribe, go ahead and do it. If you don't, thanks for stopping by. Anyways, I really appreciate you, and we're going to have some fun today. So without any further ado, let's just do it. Leading edges, let's get into it. This was a long day, extremely productive, but there was quite a bit of extra credit that had to be done. When you're doing the leading edges, you do have to, it's not optional, remove the inside vinyl before you do any of the fittings here. The cradle was very helpful. The fluting that I did was also very helpful. These went together pretty easily and fairly quickly, following Van's instructions, which is to start with the leading edge on the top, working backwards, and then flip it over and work from the front to the rear on the other side. Wasn't really much difficulty at all in getting these things assembled, and the ribs are fairly uncomplicated in terms of the order of them. You leave one rib out, the inboardmost rib that you will fit later on, which you'll see. But once I get it all put together and attempt to mount it on the wing, I notice a complication, and that's where the extra credit for the day comes in. Still pretty satisfying. This is the first time, once this is on here, that we'll have something that, at least in the wings, is an airfoil type structure. So here's the problem. It's not lining up with the holes, and you can see me trying to scoot it there. It's not able to scoot far enough. That piece of angle, the bracket that it's mounted on, is blocking it because on the outboard end of the wings, which is what we're looking at, the skins extend beyond the ribs for the attachment of the fiberglass wing tips. So I need to take these things apart and cut some notches, which is what I'm measuring right there. So, yep. I have to modify my perfect stands, or the stands that I thought were perfect anyways. And then another complication you'll see here in a minute is I'm going to do the old trick with the 2x4s on the clamp to the table so I can hang the wing there while I take the stand apart. And what I find out after doing all of this is I can't actually hang it for the same reason. The bracket that holds the outboard edge of the wing now doesn't have enough bite. There's not enough length there with the wing skins attached. It's not going to work. So I take off the bottom skins, which should have been off already, but I take off the bottom skins so that I can do this, lay it flat on the table with just the bare side of the ribs and start making some cuts on my brackets so that everything will fit nicely. I think the day in total was, about 9 hours. But I added a significant amount of time having to take the wings off the stands, take the stands apart, and do all this business, and still managed to basically complete both leading edges on this day, and leave the workshop before the sun was down. So a really productive day. So I guess that's all to say that the only complications on this day were really about the wing stands. Here you go. Nice fit. Notches are in place. Everything is butter. But obviously I had to do this for both wing stands. So everything fit nice and easy. And now I've got it mounted on the top, and here I'm just clecoing in the rib flanges. All of these main ribs are offset to each other, so they don't run through like a straight line, so which is great. The only exception to that is the outboard rib, where you do have the rib, spar, and rib all sandwiched together in a single piece. So once all of happily, man, these things all lined up. There was no fishing for holes here. One thing to note, though, is the two, let's call them the second and third ribs from the inboard section. Those two need additional holes drilled in them. The top and the bottom, or the two outboard holes on those rib flanges, need to be match drilled with the spar. Not a big deal. The splice joint it shows up actually attached to the tank skin, so you need to remove that, and then this, smooth off those little tabs. There'll be much more prep on this later, but this is just a fitting. This was way easier than I expected it to be, probably because the way that it works right now is that it is just preformed on the tank skin, and you just cut it off, so it's not a random piece of straight aluminum. It's already, the bend is already in it. But oh man, this, I think in the past this must have been pretty difficult, but I was shocked at how easily this thing went together, which is the inboard rib, the one that you put in last, with that splice joint fitting between that and the skin. And happily, this went together really easily on both wings. So yeah, leading edges were kind of fun to build because it wasn't very difficult. It's a cool shape. It looks cool when you put it on the wing, and just not a lot of aggravation. So I guess, the only real challenge of the day was the wing stand. So if you are not to this point yet and you're building wing stands like this, keep in mind that you need an extra 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch relief where the skins are going to extend beyond the edge of the outboard end of the wing. If you do that ahead of time, it'll save you a lot of trouble later on. So get this whole thing fitted. It's still a battle of clecos, so I'll be ordering some more this week. Today I'll be starting on the tanks, which is exciting and frightening at the same time. But let's see. There you go. There's one. There's really not much left to do to this thing other than final size drill the holes and then add the 1, 2, 3, 4 flange holes match drilled to the spar. So that's all really easy work, and these are going to live on here until we're ready to take the whole thing apart. So earlier in the top right, we drew lines that intersected on the center of the tie-down attach hole, which is what you see up there. And then later, when the leading edge is on, you transfer those lines, and you hope that it matches up with a pre-punched hole. But they ask you to do this anyways because, quote, sometimes there are variations. So when I transferred these lines, it looked like the pre-punched hole versus where mine was at was off by, a 1/16 of an inch or less. So I used a needle file to kind of move the center of the hole like they instruct, and then a unibit to try to take it up to 3/8, but you can't get that deep because of that structure behind it. So what ended up happening is I tried to upsize it a little bit at a time, and the drill bit, the tie-down attach point underneath is pretty close. The unibit can't get all the way to the 3/8 inch step, so try to chase it a little bit, and then one of those drill bits, once it caught, kind of sucked into it, so I had to re-tap that hole to clean up the threads. Here you can see it all worked out, but what I did on the second wing was screw all that noise, because what I found out was that once I did drill up that hole, the pre-punched hole was, and the case I think would be for most people, the pre-punched hole was more accurate than the lines that I traced and then later transferred onto the skins. So the second wing, and here you see me taking these stands apart so I can make those cuts. There's one extra thing that I had to do, confession here. On the right side of the screen, that would be the inboard portion of the spar. For whatever reason, my perfect stands are less perfect than I thought, and that distance is not 104. It's 114 inches at the base, but the wood has maybe dried out and bowed a little bit, so it's about 113 3/4, which meant that I had to shave some of that, shave down some of that bracket, so that inboard portion of the spar could rest on there without resting on a rivet head. But it's done. So finishing up. But what I was going to say, and maybe we'll see it here, is on the second wing, what I ended up doing for drilling that hole was just go with the pre-punched hole. Chances are that pre-punched hole is more accurate than the lines that you traced. And in fact, it was dead on. So the second one, I used the pre-punched hole, but before I did any drilling, I went ahead and removed, you can't see it really here, but I went ahead, there you go. I took out that, took out the bell crank attach brackets and the tie down point, just got them out of the way so that I could cleanly drill the hole with the step bit so that it could punch all the way through to that 3/8 steps. And then I dropped the bracket, the tie down attach point back in there, and guess what? It fits. So that was a day, and it's done. And now we get to start on the tanks. That is episode 53, folks.